In the previous presentation, attendance was a big portion, and that's what we're going to hear about again. It obviously is a major issue in our district and really across the country in schools, K through 12. And speaking on that is going to be Matt Fenlon and Eli Claffey.
Come on now. There we go.
So Matt first approached me about attendance and being his partner for our Teacher Leaders project at school. We teach across from the hall from each other. I teach mostly lower level math classes, Algebra 1, pre-algebra. This is my second year teaching.
And I teach AP World History, and I struggle with attendance policies. I have one girl that she passed in the class because of competency-based grading, but she's out about 2 days a week, at least. But she passes because of competency-based grading, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I have a friend that teaches at Lowell High School. He's an assistant principal, and they have a certain policy. In a semester, you can be out 7 unexcused days. When you go over that threshold, you can still pass the class and go on to the next class, as long as you have sufficient grades, but you don't get the credit. So there's like a little ding. And we have to have a carrot and stick, and we don't have a stick. All we do is, okay, if you make it up, you make it up. So we're trying to figure out a way to make a system that is not punitive. You know, some kids have, obligations, family obligations. Maybe they have to stay home and get their younger sibling off to school because their parents work, and that's understandable, and you have to make accommodations for that. But for a kid that doesn't have those excuses, legitimate ones, then there has to be something put in place. That's what we tried to cobble together. And this is our ode to Elm Street.
As Matt was just saying,
was Ian when we need him?
that policy in Lowell, that type of zero tolerance policy is something that we have seen in Nashua, not for about 20 years, maybe a little more. One of the trickiest things we wanted to consider when we were coming up with a way to encourage kids and support kids in attendance was how we can have a policy that doesn't misconstrue the goals of competency-based grading. If you can do the material, if you have the skills that pay the bills, you should receive credit, in my opinion. I've been blessed with the opportunity to only teach in competency-based grading as a young teacher. So a lot of old school attitudes I never really was exposed to.
Right. Well, like my class, it's, you're reading a book, you're reading, history. That's easy to do independently. You'll miss my dynamic personality. But with math, it's a building block. That's a little tougher to do than like history or reading, of Mice and Men or something like that. Maybe you miss some nuances the teacher might be throwing out there, but with math or science, like you can't do a lab at home, right? You can't do a physics lab, you can't do a biology lab, you can't dissect a cat. And if you're doing it at home, there's something wrong.
Yeah. The most useful piece of literature that we found came from the Pacific Northwest. The Northwest Regional Education Lab, which is a conglomerate of professionals in education. Their main goals is basically disseminate information for the purpose of school districts like our own to have best practices in, specifically in this case, increasing student attendance. They found that there are 6 crucial factors that affect students coming to school. 2 of the most important ones were their perceptions about their purpose at school, whether or not they belong, and their perceptions about the repercussions for missing school. So we focused on those 2 in particular. This research does have lots of suggestions for what schools can do. We focused on the least financially demanding things, namely having interventions in place for students who are not coming to school and having clearly defined, sound, and reasonable repercussions for students who are missing lots of school. Our current policy, the duties rely on our admin, especially our principals at the building. The policy that we're going to propose focuses on the high schools. That's our wheelhouse, and it's a little tougher to define something for younger students that we would feel comfortable proposing. Current policy basically just involves sending letters. There's one truancy officer for all of Nashua, and based on my conversations with teachers in our district, that truancy officer focuses on younger students. It's a lot harder to get the high school kids to come to school.
How many students are there in Nashua? 11,000. So you got one guy tracking down and think about all the kids that you have out on a daily basis that are out a lot. And that one guy going there to a house where you think the kid's gonna open the door, it's probably home alone playing Xbox.
That's what I do when I'm home alone. This graph is a little bit difficult to understand, so I'll explain that in a moment. But first, I want to share with you what we did for research. We collected some data. Thank you to Lori Kutu for giving us the attendance data from South in the spring of last year. We found some what was very surprising to me, numbers on the way students pass classes and fail classes when they miss lots of school. The students that you see portrayed here are missing 15 or more days of school. And the first graph is students that missed 15 or more days in one semester and did not fail. That's over 200 students just at Nashua South alone. I found that shocking. That was very surprising to me. The very surprising thing to me as a person who loves ratios is that the students who are missing 15 or more days and passing classes, it's almost 1-to-1 to the students who are missing 15 or more days and failing classes. So the following two bar graphs are students that failed more than one class, over 150, and students that failed at most one class, but failed at least one. So exactly one. That's just under 100. So in total, there's more students missing 15 or more days, failing at least one class, than there are students 15 or more days absent that are passing. But it's very close. I'll give you another moment to just kind of absorb that. If you wanted to ask, be my guest. Is that clear?
Yeah.
All right. That was tricky to describe. Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any chance that you could compare it to before competency-based grading? Like, do you think competency-based grading changed that ratio?
So thank you to Keith Richard for providing historic attendance data at Nashua South. What I saw over time is that if you get a large enough sample of students, our attendance rate goes between 90 and 92%. So, and it doesn't really change over time. It's kind of fascinating, but I'm a numbers guy.
But
So.
that 8 or 10% are usually frequent flyers as far as being out.
I would agree with that based on the data we saw from Lori
Kutu.
Kutu.
Among kids.
There's
But I think
just-
competency-based grading is giving some kids an artificial safety net that shouldn't be there. It's okay, you get pneumonia, you have an illness, you're death in the family. Or if you, like kids I have there from India, their parents decide, oh, we're going to India for like 2 weeks. That's not their fault. You can't blame them for jumping on a plane and going somewhere. So you have to have a safety net, and competency-based grading does provide that for that exception to the rule, which there should be. You have to take things into context, not, I just didn't feel like going to school today.
Another piece of information that we collected was a survey administered to high school teachers, administrators, and guidance counselors. We essentially just wanted to get a handle on what kind of things teachers would like to see from an effective attendance policy. The most popular at the top being attendance affecting credit recovery eligibility, with 75% or so of those surveyed feeling that that would be a really good way to impact kids who are missing lots of school. Attendance more clearly reported on transcript and report card. Walt, that would be lovely to have in big bold letters. Still, 70% of those surveyed feel that attendance should directly impact grades. I think that that would be effective in encouraging students who are close to passing to come to school. However, if you are not close to passing, we still want you to come and get better, and it might lead to people giving up. It also certainly does not play well with competency-based grading. So that's something we're going to avoid in our proposal. Attendance affecting eligibility for extracurriculars, that's 60%. That was definitely something we're going to go for, as well as additional financial support for another truancy officer in our district.
But I think the extracurricular stuff like sports, if you're not there for practice, you're not playing. So
Right.
that kind of is already embedded in things.
Yeah.
And we don't want kids not coming to school, that don't come to school to not be participatory, in extracurricular events. We want them to, in Walt's play. We want them to play on the baseball field. We want to give them the lure to come in other than just academics.
That affects their perception of their place in school. It helps. That's probably the number one thing outlined in the report from the Northwest Educational Lab, is that if students feel like they have a place in school, if they feel like they belong, they're going to come. I know that. Even kids who fail my class.
How many clubs do we have at our school, do you know? Yeah, I mean, we have more lures, more hooks to pull kids in, but we want them in there for their education too, not just for the,
And the written input that we accepted on this survey helped us see exactly what kind of qualms people would have with an attendance policy. We'll outline those after we show you what we're thinking. So, our proposal, policy for the high schools. Multi-tiered system of support. We've got tier 0, that's if you're coming to school. We have tier 1, that's alerts and probation. That's kind of the letters that we do now. We got tier 2, that's a chat meeting, and tier 3, that's the zone of critical need. We're going to outline those now.
We have the chat already in place, but I don't know that we use the chat for attendance. So we
No.
wanted to kind of dovetail that in for, all right, now we need to bring mom and dad in.
And I've been using the idea of chat in conversations with lots of people, and no one has any concerns with me using the chat form for that. If you have any, I would love to hear those at the end. Probably the most drastic thing that our policy is going to include is that we're going to do away with excused versus unexcused. We see a lot of discrepancy between lower income students with busy parents working 2 jobs being able to excuse their kids from school. We feel that that is unfair. And if you're not in school, you're not in school, and you're not in school.
And let's face it, parents will lie.
They will.
They'll say, yep, little Johnny's staying home today, la 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 la.
So one of the things that the increasing student attendance research showed us is that you need a reliable, consistent, very clearly outlined intervention that happens fast. Activated after 4 absences in a quarter or 5 in a semester. We talked to a lot of quarter teachers who, if you miss a week of a quarter class, that's a big deal. If you miss a week of a full year class, it's a little different. So we wanted to have 2 thresholds for those. Hopefully this notification of parents and students would be automated through their daily attendance next to. We're going to focus on daily attendance rather than classroom attendance, just because it's a little easier to get a handle on. But tier 1 is essentially just, hey, we have a policy, you need to come to school, you're entering tier 2, dude. And tier 2 is chat meeting, which happens after 6 absences in a quarter or 8 absences in 1 semester. The numbers that we chose for where your thresholds get broken, we surveyed teachers for that too, and we just crunched the numbers a little bit as fractions of the year and did something that felt appropriate. This chat meeting is initiated by a guidance counselor or administrator. I see no reason why a classroom teacher could not also initiate this chat meeting, but
Yeah. Well,
certainly.
The big question is the first one. Why are you absent? Yeah, that's the biggest one. Why are you not here?
And the purpose of the chat is not meant to be preachy or confrontational. It's really, we want to uncover, did you have a death in the family? Are you actually ill? What can be done to help you get to school? We want to be informative. What will happen if the absences continue? How are your grades? How is everything else? And what alternative education options are available to the student? Maybe they would be better served at a school like Clearway. All viable questions to be asked and answered, hopefully, in this meeting.
We don't know if a kid's getting bullied or harassed and they don't like the environment they're in, but we need to ask those questions. And sometimes they don't.
And perhaps the most interesting zone would be tier 3. 8 absences in 1 quarter or 12 absences in a semester. This is where you're going to start to see the repercussions for missing school. If the student is passing all their courses, no action will be taken. One of the most repeated concerns we had in consulting with other teachers was, hey, what about the kid who misses a lot of school and still does fine? We don't want to hit that kid. I don't.
No.
If failing, the following consequences will be implemented. Classroom recovery, not impacting credit recovery. So within the semester, when I offer a retake for a test, that's teacher discretion, and that comes from the top. That comes from the policy. So if you're missing 20 days in my class, and I know you can't pass the systems of inequality tests, I don't have to give you the systems of inequality tests. I know of at least 1 teacher who gets asked by their administrator to print out all of their tests and administer these tests to students who never show up. That's directly from the teacher themselves. We're going to take away their extracurricular privileges, of course. And the parking privileges is particularly controversial.
They pay for that.
They pay for that.
Yeah, well,
It's their method of getting to school, and this is an attendance policy. So
So if you're not using your parking,
it's
then
tricky.
you're not passing.
On the one hand, it forces a junior or a senior who would be driving to school like a cool kid to ride the bus, which is quite the stick, as Matt would say. But on the other hand, it might make it more difficult for you to come to school, or it might make you feel unwelcome, and that perception of their place at school is very important. So definitely want to handle the parking privileges with some discretion, is our suggestion. That is our policy itself. If you would like to read about it a little more, we feel that we've outlined it pretty clearly for you. It is in our paper. These are some common concerns. If a student can perform the competencies to proficient standards, it should not matter how many days they've missed. We feel we cover that by giving you the green light at Tier 3, as long as your grades are okay.
Yeah.
Spotty attendance is unfortunately always going to be an issue. I don't really see that as a counter-argument. Idealists move forward, not in circles. We're gonna make things better. I can't make it perfect, but I'm gonna make it better. I'd love to hear your common concerns and questions, if you have any for us.
No, not you, Gary.
I saw that. Mr. Hoffman.
So one of the people that I recommend speaking to about this is Heather Raymond, who's on the school board. She used to work for the State Department, Youth and Child Services, and I spoke with her about attendance on Thursday. I mentioned this presentation, something to check out. And she said that when she worked for the Department of Youth and Child Services, that she would have trouble in Nashua helping some of the kids who weren't coming to school because of our lack of a strong attendance policy that would show the negative impact. Because the state's law, from what she said, requires them to show the negative impact on the student. Because Nashua's attendance policy was kind of on the flimsy side.
Negative, and we have no attendance policy.
She could not get them actually the services that they really needed to do that, and it actually impacted her work.
Wow.
So we don't think about how we're related to these other state agencies. So I definitely recommend you speak with her about this, because she has an interesting take, and she would be very interested in talking to you guys about this.
Thank you.
I would like to applaud the BOE's attendance today.
Excuse his sarcasm. Yes.
I can't.
I wanted to say, I think your idea of using the chat is a great idea.
Thank you.
Because it brings it to the forefront.
Oh, yeah.
And it allows you to nuance it, because we all have in our minds that one kid who is supervising his younger siblings or
Yeah.
something until 8:45 when my school starts,
Mhm.
and gives a teacher some flexibility to say, okay, how can we scaffold the student? Maybe it's only Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they can have something they do at home for my particular class, because that's the living room space.
Or you can get a modified
It's a great
schedule.
way to be flexible.
Or guidance
Certainly.
modifies the schedule, because you only need, to get a core diploma, you need 20. 27 for
Yeah.
a regular diploma.
But you have all those
So you've got
options on the table.
flexibility in there.
Yeah.
Yes, back here.
So I know that you talked about focusing on daily attendance. Would the policies apply to specific classes, like for the kids who choose to come in second or third block every day, like just those classes? Because those attendance, like my attendance numbers for my block 1 for some kids are very different than their block 3 attendance.
I
So,
think that's where maybe a modified schedule. If they can't get in block 1, as she was saying, they're staying home with their younger sibling, then yeah, maybe the school
That's-
needs to make an accommodation.
that's more of a Band-Aid than I'd like to use personally. I think that it would be easy to expand our policy to classroom attendance as well. I think because I would like to automate the Tier 1 notifications, daily attendance would be the easiest to automate that, because that's the most clearly set attendance in X2. And I know X2 is very difficult. I wouldn't want to write code for anything in X2 personally. But I don't see why it couldn't be expanded for classroom attendance as well. And I've heard that concern from lots of teachers. Yes.
So Eli, you mentioned that historically, based on the data he gave you, that attendance has always fluctuated between 9% and 92%. And Rachel, this gets to the question that you were asking me earlier. Is it an incorrect assumption to say that before competency-based assessment, it's more likely that a kid who is never in school or is frequently absent would never pass? Like, is that?
I would hesitate to answer your question.
I'm struggling a little bit that, I understand. I'm struggling a little bit with, like, the diminishment of the importance of education. If a child can be absent so frequently and still pass. Like, it seems like a common.
I would say with our current assessment policy, competency-based grading, it's inevitable that your attendance can't directly impact your grade. We know it's important. You need to show up. It's a professional skill. You need to be at work.
Well, it should be embedded in the 21st century
I think what you're
skills.
saying is how can the kids still pass if they're missing that much class?
We have 200 students missing 15 or more days in spring semester passing. I don't know how, but they're doing it.
Right.
Yes. I'm sorry. I've had.
Can I just comment on that?
Sure.
How are they passing? They're passing because we allow them to recover. And we work really, really hard to get them to pass. Those are the students that we target, the students that are absent. That one day that they're there, we are on that student. And that's why they're passing. But it creates a lot of strain and it's
a
a
lot of work on
sacrifice
our
of the
part.
students.
Cue the
that
clinking of
are-
glasses, right?
So that just suggested if every department added
There you go.
attendance as a competency,
Oh,
competency-based.
I can see that. Yes, you've been waiting for a while.
Is there any, like, contract in the chat plan, or like the student will, like, kind of like a 504 plan, where they have a
Right.
section where it says student will, teacher will, school will?
Expectation.
I could see a
Laying out
specific attendance
expectations.
chat form with checkboxes.
Yeah, so like something that, to hold the kids accountable for their.
And their parents.
And their parents,
We-
or the teachers, or like the school's gonna make a modification to the schedule.
We haven't
Like,
designed anything like that. I could see it done in about 30 minutes.
It might just be an interesting way to keep their data, so that, you know, who held up their end of the deal, and like what was working and what wasn't working.
I want to come back to Diane's question just briefly because that was a really good question. Historically, the attendance data, I did not also look at their grades.
Right, and that's.
So the only,
That was Rachel's question.
yep, I only looked at, I only compared grades and attendance for the spring of 2017 at Nashville South. Yes.
Okay. Is your hope to take this eventually to the Board of Ed to try and get them to implement it as a policy?
We hope they were here today.
Okay.
They would be here.
Okay, so since the amount of them come to you, you have to amount.
Thanks for setting me up.
But here's my thought. Your presentation is focused on the students who are high flyers and not attending. Does their non-attendance impact what you do in the classroom with your rest of your students? Are you spending time reteaching to try to accommodate those students who are absent a day or two? I mean, how much of your...
Well, that could be E-block.
It
Okay.
just,
I'm just wondering if that would strengthen your argument with the rest of the board that you are taking up the other students'
E-block
time.
miracles.
I would say yes.
Okay,
I mean, in math, we do
Yep.
so much practice.
right.
And it's so apparent to anyone who teaches math, and I'm sure other subjects, I'm speaking to math because that's what I teach myself. If you are consistent in your practice, you will be good at it. If you are not consistent in your practice, you have to be very lucky and very gifted to be good
It's
at it.
like shooting basketballs or hitting baseballs.
Right.
Some people have a
Right.
gift, and
Question from
that's
on a
fine,
personal
but
perspective,
Yeah.
this year, every time we had a school delay or a snow day,
Yep.
I lost 2 days of instruction because my worst attendance
Mhm.
is the day after a snow day. In block 1, I had 1 student. In block 3, I had 3 students.
Yes.
And in block 4, where 100% of my students are on free and reduced school lunch, I had
Yes.
8 out of 12.
Why? Why is that?
Because
They're coming in for food.
yeah, they
Presentation
didn't,
no
they
longer than one
didn't come in the day after the snow day because
Yep.
there's still snow and they
It's
couldn't come
saucy.
in.
And
then
this
I
is
lost
saucy.
The next day
Ooh,
reteaching.
spicy.
zero
So
tolerance.
it's just another dimension
Zero
that might
tolerance. All our
help
classes.
get some board members on your side with this, to talk about not only the student who
The
is
instruction time.
frequently absent, but also how it impacts your instruction of the
Sure,
other
certainly.
students.
Yeah.
And how are these 200 students passing? They're passing because of dedicated teachers who have
Who stay after?
a limited
Yeah.
source of time to spend on their classes.
And emotional capacity.
Yeah, and they're spending their everybody's resources are limited to some degree.
Yeah.
They're spending some of those limited resources keeping those kids in the passing lane,
Yeah.
right?
Certainly.
And they could spend it, they would spend it, because obviously they're dedicated, they would spend it on something more
For every
Yeah.
useful
Yeah.
for
As
all
opposed to
students
just-
if they didn't have these.
I would say that the most unanimous voice that we heard in our research and especially in our survey is that we're not doing enough, and that matches the research that we found. It's clearly
That the district
If-
as a system is not doing enough?
the district as a system is not doing enough. The
Not us.
lack of teeth in our policy is nothing. It's
Got it.
makes it ineffective completely.
Is there a message to kids, an unspoken message? We don't care if you're here,
Yeah.
do what you want.
Pretty much.
And it's not true for us on the ground. And I don't think it's true for anybody, but I think it's the message we're sending unconsciously.
Hopefully in the future we'll have something better.
That's for all.
With the power vested in me by James Graham, I'll let you go to break, I assume? Is that safe? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.